really are just
That's
talking about
that's how in prison even pedophiles are the ones that are the least safe, because
right.
a lot of people that are in prison, I'm not letting them off the hook for a lot of things that they do, but a lot of the conversations that we're having is we're not victim blaming, we're not putting shame on this. What we're doing is we're trying to be proactive in how can we sustainably heal these situations.
I want to make a connection to what we're talking about and what we started talking about in terms of domestic violence. I believe very strongly, I've never shared this story publicly, so you're welcome. I believe very strongly that my early experiences with child molestation, child abuse, had a direct correlation to lack of boundaries that led to my domestic violence later in my life. There is a direct correlation to that, and I've had to do the work in being aware of myself, really looking at myself through many angles, receiving that counseling and therapeutic support. And while I am a trained psychologist, a lot of my healing did not come in a psychologist's office. It came through my own nature of being reflective and finding plant medicines and finding community that I could sit with and really just process my experiences. And so I feel really strongly that when we experience like a violation in a relationship that would cause some type of abuse, whether it's sexual or otherwise, and the possible connection it can have to other unhealthy patterns or styles in relationships, it's so important for us to be able to be self-aware of those patterns, do the work that we need to, and so that we can find healthy support systems that can really help us look at things from other points of view other than just our lens of the abuse or labeling ourselves as a victim or a survivor. That's why I use quotation marks, because I personally don't use that term anymore for me. That while at one point I resonated with that, I transitioned into another stage of my life where I recognized, okay, these experiences were needed for me to be able to see the lens of life through which I look at it now. So I'm grateful. I'm not grateful that pedophilia still exists, you know what I mean? But I am grateful that I'm aware of it so that we can have these conversations courageously.
Yeah, I'm grateful too. I'm grateful to have lived the life that I've lived and experienced the things that I've seen and witnessed and read and whatnot, so that way I can bring this, all to everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I started when I was just 19 years old at Balboa Naval Hospital. And that's when I learned about the Children of Table 34 originally. And I learned about who Dr. Alfred Kinsey was because I've been an active participant in the LGBTQ community, and I have heard of the Kinsey scale. And because of my psychology background, I had learned about who Dr. Abraham Maslow was. And, just picking up on all of those things throughout my life, I've been able to connect the dots and bring it to everybody. And then I also learned about plant medicine through my journey also. I learned about the Concord prison experiment in relation to narcissistic abuse recovery. Have you ever heard of the Concord prison experiment?
Tell us about it.
The Concord prison experiment was done in the 1960s, between 1961 to 1964, I believe. And it was cut short because Nixon cut it short. But the experiment involved prisoners, and they gave them a 5-gram dose of psilocybin magic mushrooms. And they looked at these prisoners' files, and they read everything, and they did their little calculations and whatnot. And they figured that after, I think Timothy Leary was actually on this study, but they figured that at the end of the study that the recidivism rate would drop to just 25%. But it actually dropped 64%. So what I mean by that is the return rate on the prisoners was expected for them to return to the prison at a rate of 25%, but they ended up staying away from the prison at 64% instead, which is more than double.
Yeah, for sure.
So what that tells me, and the ones that did return, I think there was only 2 of them. The ones that did return, they returned because of new charges or because they had violations to their parole. So nobody was a repeat offender for their original crime. So what that tells me is that, that's a very positive affirmation for a prisoner for the recidivism rate. That's a very positive effect. Yeah.
For sure.
And I want to bring that back. And, the male brain is also more malleable than the female brain. So I do think that there is a lot of hope involved with plant medicine research and, for not just for a criminal perspective, but also for, Alzheimer's, dementia, PTSD, all kinds of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Beautiful. Yeah. Anything else?
Anything else?
Homework.
I would say if this story touched you personally and you're looking for resources, you want some support systems, Marissa, I'm sure, would be happy to point you in the direction of some resources. Same thing, I would be happy to point you in the direction of resources. I also hold and host ceremonies where we utilize plant medicine, really kind of think about it not just as a way to expand your mind, but as a way to really reset your nervous system, to really use it to communicate to your body, to be open and ready to release. Because that's the thing with a lot of domestic violence or sexual abuse and things of that nature. The result can be holding on, because that's a coping mechanism, right? We're holding on, we're keeping in. It's a form of protection. But when we do that, not just with our emotions, but energetically, it can have a really impactful ripple effect in our overall health and well-being. And so learning to release is to relax and surrender enough to release. It can be a very powerful healing tool. And if not completely wiping away a lot of those embedded memories that impact our nervous system, it can be a starting point to start working on learning to release, let go, and work through some of the things that do come up for us, because plant medicine can be very, very helpful. And one more thing, Divine Earth Mother has created the plant kingdom first, so that we have all of the support systems in place to be healthy. So the trees are producing oxygen, the herbs are here for our medicine. And so I just want to remind us that, if this resonates with you, or maybe it's activating for you, go walk in some grass barefoot, touch a tree, allow yourself to find that homeostasis in connection to our relatives, which is the plant kingdom. And if you feel like, well, I don't have any human beings, other people that I can lean on, that I trust, start with the plant kingdom and allow that to be a way to start feeling more interconnected with life and to combat a lot of the depressive and suicidal tendencies that can come with some of these heavier topics that we're referring to today.
We have transponders on the bottom of our feet.
We do. So utilize them. And that would be my invitation, maybe not homework, but invitation for you today.
So how can those traumatic experiences that have memories in our nervous system, how can they affect our future?
I mean, they affect everything because it's the color that we look at the world, you know? It's the color that, it's those colored glasses that we're wearing, so.
So the comfortability of how things are now can affect us of not wanting to break out of that cycle.
It can actually affect our DNA.
100%.
There was actually a research study done called the Cherry Scent Research Study, and I talk about this a lot, where they administered fear at the same time that they were administering the scent of cherry, and that scent actually affected the grandchildren of the original mice, and they actually found that the mice would smell cherry and experience fear, and it attached to their DNA, and it changed it, and they actually had an even more adverse experience to the scent of cherry than the first round.
Yeah. I mean, and what Marissa is referring to is the field of epigenetics, and it's a very interesting form of science, and maybe we can talk about that more later. But yeah, like whether we know it or not, right? Because genetics are interesting in the sense of we can get passed down things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it will present itself or express itself in our lifetime. But if we experience certain circumstances, those genetics can then turn on.
Yeah.
And so it's like a light switch. And, you know, again, if you practice being connected and rooted to the earth mother, she's always here to support you being the most well that you can. And if you have, you know, family members or a mother that maybe was a narcissist, or, you know, I don't laugh because it's funny, but I laugh because it's a coping mechanism of, you know, sometimes this is the case.
Coping mechanism.
You know, this is a reality that we are experiencing, and we're working through it as a collective. And, you know, yes, we want to push past our comfort zone and be willing to have these courageous conversations. So we thank you, Marissa, for bringing in all this amazing science and knowledge that you have. And she has an amazing movement specifically connected to the family court system, and she's just a wealth of knowledge. And I invite you to connect with her if you feel like that is some area of support that you can really utilize. And, you know, we look forward to the next time that you're with us, and, you know, maybe we'll have another guest, or maybe Marissa will want to come back. Who knows?
Nice.
Hashtag #MeTooFamilyCourt. Thank
you for joining us.
Peace.
Until next time.
Until next time.